Sarcoma Stories is a podcast created by Sarcoma Foundation of America to highlight the voices and experiences of patients, survivors, and care partners. After listening, be sure to join our Sarcoma Stories podcast Facebook group to connect with the community and discuss the episode. Follow us and enable notifications on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss new episodes. You can also find all episodes and information on this subtype or your subtype on SFA's website, curesarcoma.org. Links are in this episode's description. On this episode, we speak with Gianna Cericola, a survivor of Desmoplastic small round cell tumor, or DSRCT for short. After 2 long years, she rang the bell signifying the end of active treatment just 2 weeks before we recorded this episode. We feel so lucky to be able to sit down with her at this pivotal moment of transition. Gianna opens up about what being done with treatment actually means and why the end of treatment isn't the end of a cancer diagnosis. She shares about how she's relied on self-advocacy, not only to receive a diagnosis, but to navigate treatment and conversations with her medical team. As an adolescent young adult, Gianna talks about continuing to live her life through her diagnosis, including getting engaged during treatment and thinking about surrogacy to one day build her family, and why it can be difficult to plan for the future. This episode is full of raw and honest insight into Gianna's experience, and we are so grateful for the time she took to share with us. We also wanted to note and give insight to a conversation we have about Gianna's subtype being classified as ultra-rare. Sarcoma is a rare cancer to begin with, but within the numerous subtypes of sarcoma, there are some, like DSRCT, that are considered ultra-rare, defined as subtypes with an annual incidence of 1 or fewer cases per million people. Thank you, Gianna, for giving voice to the experience of being diagnosed with an ultra-rare subtype. So with that, let's dive in. Welcome to Sarcoma Stories, and welcome back if you are a regular listener. My name is Tasha. I'm one of your hosts.
Hi, and I'm Katie, your other host.
We are joined today by Gianna Cericola. Gianna, I feel like this is a long time coming. You and I have been talking literally for almost 2 years now since your journey began.
That's crazy.
It's absolutely wild. We had talked about doing this, honestly, at so many different points in your journey. Now you literally finished your treatment 2 weeks ago. So I'm excited to dive more into what that has been like for you. But to give everyone a little introduction, Gianna is a DSRCT, or Desmoplastic small round cell tumor sarcoma survivor, a graphic designer, content creator. She shares so much about her cancer journey on social media and is super passionate about advocating for sarcoma and spreading awareness about it. So we're grateful to you for doing that with your platform, and I'm excited for you to be here today.
I'm so excited to be here and to talk with you.
Before we get to your sarcoma story, Gianna, tell us a little bit about you. And I think this maybe is an interesting question for where you're at right now, because you're in a huge moment of transition. So tell us where you're currently at and what that's been like for you in the last few weeks.
Yeah, so currently I just finished treatment about 2 weeks ago, which has been such a weird transition going from treatment pretty much every day almost to just like no more appointments and anything. It just feels super weird, and I feel like I know I'll get used to it at some point, but yeah, it's a different feeling because I felt safe going to the doctors every single day and getting treatment, and now I'm like, okay, what's going to happen now when all of that stops? So yeah, I'm just in this weird in between trying to figure things out. I just got laid off from my graphic design job like 2 days before I rang the bell. So now I'm like, what do I do with myself? What do I do with my time? It's just a wild transition.
So much transition. We're going to talk so much more about all of that transition. But I'd love to hear about how this all began. Can you take us back to the beginning of your sarcoma story?
Yeah, it all started in like April of 2024. I started having some weird symptoms that I couldn't really explain. I thought I had a UTI going on. So I went to urgent care first, and they were like, yeah, we don't think you have a UTI, but here's some meds, here's some antibiotics, try this, see if it gets better. So I took those for about a week. Nothing got better. Still having those weird symptoms in my left abdomen. I went to my OBGYN. They didn't do any ultrasounds, any scans or anything. They were like, I think you might have endometriosis, something like that might be going on. But I was like, my periods are never painful. I don't think I have that. So they were like, come back in a month if things don't get better. So I did end up going to my primary doctor to get looked at. They couldn't find a reason why I was having all these symptoms. And I would say all of my symptoms lasted for about 6 months. And none of the doctors could explain why it was happening. They're like, you're healthy, you're young, everything looks okay. Um, so then I ended up just going to the ER, taking myself there because I'm like, something is definitely not right. Um, and the doctor was like, yeah, you look fine. My stomach, nothing seems abnormal. Your blood work looks fine. They refused to do scans on me, which is crazy to me. And they sent me home. So I think it was the next day I ended up passing out at home, which is really scary because that's never happened before. So I think I went back to the ER like right after I passed out. They did an ultrasound and then they saw like an 8 centimeter mass next to my ovary.
Mm.
And then they referred me to see a specialist. So I think I was set up to see them in a week, but I ended up passing out again at home, rushed to the hospital, and they saw that I was bleeding internally. I had like 2 liters of blood in my stomach,
Wow.
which was insane. And they're like, we don't even know how you're functioning right now.
Is
Like,
that what was causing you to pass out? Was the internal bleeding?
yeah, yeah, which I had no idea that was going on. It was insane.
What kind of specialist did they want you to
Yeah.
see at that point?
It was an OBGYN oncologist, and she was thinking that it was just a cyst that was ruptured or something like that.
What do they do this second time that you pass out and they figure this out?
They admitted me to the hospital right then and there. And I think the specialist came in to see me in the hospital the next day, and they wanted to wait on doing a surgery. And she came in and she was like, no, we're going in like tomorrow.
Wow.
So she ended up doing the surgery and she thought it was just a cyst. She's like, I don't think it's cancer. On the scan, it doesn't look like cancer. So then I found out the next day after surgery.
So they went into the surgery with the intention kind of to explore what this was and stop the internal bleeding. And
Yeah,
I imagine at that time they take a biopsy of what they had found.
they did. Yep.
And so shortly after the surgery, you find out it's cancer.
Yeah, the next day she was like, I'm pretty sure it's cancer. Like I've done a lot of surgeries. I just don't know like what type it is. I think it took a month to get the diagnosis. Like it took a pretty long time.
So what did they kind of give you then as next steps? We're just going to run the pathology and wait and see, or did they want to get started with anything?
Yeah, they wanted to wait and see what the pathology said. And I was at the local hospital and the doctor was like, this is just something that I don't feel comfortable treating. And then they referred me to like my oncologist that I see right now.
They do that knowing it was a sarcoma, or did they refer you before they knew it was a sarcoma?
They did it when they found out it was a type of sarcoma. They said it might be rhabdo. That's what they were thinking. And then it turned out to be DSRCT.
How did you feel about that referral? Because I noticed in what you had shared with us before recording was that you ended up seeing a specialist. And one of my questions for you was, how did you know to see a specialist? But it sounds like your doctor was really the catalyst in referring you, which I have to commend them on that.
Yeah, I would have no idea, honestly, where to start if it wasn't for him. He was awesome and he was like, you need to see this specialist. I don't feel comfortable treating you. This is where you need to be. So really grateful for him.
That's not always the patient journey. And I think that's important to hear for the medical community in particular of there's this question of when to refer sometimes. And I think that's really great that he did that at that moment.
For
A recurring theme that we have that comes up a lot in our podcast episodes are the need for self-advocacy. And it was really clear in the beginning, and even I'm sure still through today, but in the beginning, multiple trips to the emergency room, trying to get them to understand the symptoms that you're experiencing, but feeling like you're possibly not being taken seriously or not receiving the care that you hope you're getting. Can you share a little bit about maybe the emotions you felt around that and the need for advocating for yourself?
Yeah, for sure. Advocating for yourself is just so important, especially, I guess, with sarcomas and rare cancers. I think because I was young, they kept overlooking things and they're like, there's nothing wrong with you. I don't know what it could be, but like it's definitely not something serious. And I don't know, I just felt left down every time I like went to a new doctor. I felt like I was going crazy, honestly. I was like, something's wrong. I know my body, and they just didn't take me seriously. And I think like even talking to other AYA patients, it's just a common thing that tends to happen, and it sucks.
This is such a common theme for our AYA patients. What would you say to doctors? What do you think they could do better to hear patients and to stop this kind of phenomenon? Because after you hear it so many times, it's like, what can we do as patients to help them understand where we're coming from and why this is such an important thing to listen to?
Yeah, I think honestly, in my experience, I think just getting a scan being the first option, I think would solve a lot of problems. They refused scans on me so many, like every time I went to the doctor. So I feel like just getting a scan, if someone says that something doesn't feel right or something's wrong, would be so helpful. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. Sometimes when we talk about it, it's like it has to be this big, complex answer, but that's actually it's not. Sometimes it is as much as
Yeah.
getting a scan and maybe just listening to the patient, like
Yeah.
really hearing them. So you've advocated for yourself, and then you get a cancer diagnosis. You learn it's sarcoma. And is this the first time you've heard of a sarcoma?
Yeah, I've never heard of it before. I was like, what is sarcoma? Like, what is that? And I
Yeah.
remember the oncologist at my local hospital, when he came in to talk to me, he was like, it's like definitely something you don't want. And I was like, oh my gosh, I remember just feeling so scared. He's like, you just don't want this diagnosis. And I was like, oh my gosh, that didn't give me hope at all. I was like, what
Oh,
am
I was
I
gonna
dealing with?
say that's
Why?
a really scary way to introduce a sarcoma diagnosis.
It was so scary. Yeah.
And so you see your specialist. At this point, do you know that it's DSRCT?
No, I don't. I don't know.
So when you see your specialist, what do they do from there?
So I think the first time I went in, they discussed like what treatment could look like. I think I had a video call with them first, just like a telehealth appointment. And they're like, it could be one of these three types of sarcomas. We're just waiting on like final pathology. And I think they did a quick overview of what the chemo would look like and what treatment would look like.
When you find out that it's DSRCT, what was that experience like? One thing I've noticed from afar as you've shared your journey is talking specifically to having a subtype that is more rare. Like there are so many subtypes in sarcoma, and the one you have is one that we don't hear as often as some of the other ones. And I think you've done a really excellent job really speaking to what that kind of feels like. So could you share with our listeners what it has been like for you having a more rare sarcoma subtype?
Yeah, the first time I heard it, when they told me the diagnosis, I was like, I have no idea what that is. I've never heard of that before. They didn't really explain it to me. So I remember I went right into my first treatment, went on Google and looked it up, which was probably not the best idea. I just was like, oh my gosh, this is not something I want at all. And I just felt so emotional, so scared. And then there's also a patient to patient kind of thing that you can connect with other patients that my hospital has for support. So I was like, I don't know anyone with this, so I'm gonna just apply and see what happens. And I remember getting a message back, and they're like, there's no one here that has that, and no one in our system that's ever had that here. So I couldn't connect with anyone. So I like went directly to Instagram, kind of did a quick search, found I think one or two people at the time that had it, reached out to them, and I was trying to connect with literally anyone who's had it just to have some hope and connect with others. So that made me feel really good just to have someone to talk to at least.
You ended up finding someone?
Yeah, I did.
I can only imagine how isolating that felt. Getting that message back of, "We don't have anybody and nor have we ever."
Yeah, I felt so alone. I was like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. I just want to find at least one person who has this so I could connect with them.
What kind of support does finding someone who has something similar to you offer?
I think it helps so much because they've experienced it. They've already been through treatment and probably all the things already. So just to talk to them and get their experience just helps so much. And when you can relate to someone who has only experienced those things as well, just really helps.
Totally. I think all three of us here have experienced that at some point in our journeys. But what you're speaking to is just, I'm sure, resonating with a lot of people in the ultra rare space because it's even more challenging in an already isolating rare diagnosis to find someone who does understand when you are dealing with something ultra rare.
Exactly.
So once you received the official diagnosis with the subtype, where did you go from there? What was the treatment course that they outlined for you?
After the diagnosis, the treatment was just super, super tough. I would stay in the hospital for 2 days, get admitted, have doxorubicin for 2 days straight. Um, and then I would get a couple weeks off, then get admitted for 5 days to the hospital, getting different chemos. I think it was like three different types of chemos for 5 days straight. And then it would just repeat that cycle. And I did that 8 times.
Yeah, you've had quite a long treatment journey, like literally about 2 years. So
Yeah.
you did those chemos, I believe also radiation.
Yeah, I had 20 sessions of full abdominal radiation right after my surgery.
And could you talk a little bit about this surgery? Because from my understanding, it was quite invasive.
Yeah, it was crazy actually.
What were you thinking going into that surgery?
Honestly, I just wanted to wake up. That was like the only thing I was thinking. If I can make it through this, I will be so happy, no matter what the outcome is. So they explained it to me beforehand, and they weren't really sure what they needed to remove from me or what was actually going to happen because the scans only show so much. So they removed my appendix, my spleen, my ovaries, my uterus, most of my like peritoneal lining, everything is gone. And then they do the chemo wash where they spray chemo into your stomach. The recovery from that was just so long. It took so long to recover from, and it was just like, the biggest surgery I think I'll ever have, probably.
Did you also have the opportunity or make have to make a decision about fertility planning as well? Kind
So I think I ended up asking my oncologist. I don't think they brought it up to me at all beforehand about it. And they were like, yeah, like we think you're okay to do like one round of fertility preservation. And so I did that, and I ended up getting 4 embryos. So I have those ready to go when I'm ready to use them.
That's another point of self-advocacy there that you've had to experience because in the conversation about fertility, we're still hearing a lot of different experiences. Some people's teams are really good about bringing it up right away. Others, like yourself, have to ask about that. So, how did you know to ask about it, or what inspired you to ask your doctor about that being an option for you? Was it the surgery or the treatment?
I think I was talking to other people going through cancer and just getting their stories, and they were like, make sure you ask about like fertility treatments and stuff like that. And I was like, oh wow, I would never even think to bring that up at all because I had no idea that would even affect my fertility. So I'm super grateful that the people that I've connected with have helped me so much. And so I brought it up to my doctor.
And that's great that you have those 4 embryos. Go ahead, Katie. It's great that you were able to do the fertility preservation in the beginning, but did they, before that surgery, then talk to you about beyond fertility, the impacts that removing those organs have on your health? Did you feel prepared for that afterwards?
Definitely not. No, they didn't tell me anything. So literally, I was just so lost. All of the symptoms I was experiencing, I was like, what the heck is happening to me? Like, what is my body doing? I was not prepared at all. So, like, I had to make an appointment with the OBGYN again and do a lot of research on my own. Um, my doctors didn't tell me literally anything, which is just crazy to me that I had to bring up everything on my own.
That's really interesting because while your subtype is extremely rare, sarcoma is rare, but the loss of those organs is not necessarily something that's rare. Like The science
Yeah,
knows about what a body goes through with the loss of reproductive organs and such. So that's really interesting, and something that I think even more weighs into the need for educating providers, and not just sarcoma specialists, but community oncologists and others as well.
I agree.
The symptoms we're referring to are causes changed by losing those organs and hormone shifts and being thrown into menopause at a young age. Because not only are you navigating the cancer diagnosis still, but now you're navigating the loss of reproductive organs. You're in all of these moments of transitions. Did you feel like you're kind of playing like whack-a-mole with symptoms of like, okay, this is the cancer, this is the surgery, this is the chemo, this is the menopause? Like, what did that feel like for you?
Yeah, for sure. All the symptoms that I've experienced, I'm like, I have no idea what symptom is causing, like, is caused by what? Is it chemo? Is it losing my ovaries, like menopause? I have no idea. So I feel like every day my body is just going through it, and I'm just always wondering, like, what is this? What am I feeling? And just the anxiety that that causes is just insane.
I think there has to be more education around explaining the impacts of these surgeries and changes to the patient. So if you were to educate a doctor, like how would you explain to them how this has impacted your quality of life? Because I think they have to understand that aspect too to explain to us as patients, like this is the changes it's going to cause.
I feel like if I was better prepared, if I had more resources and things prepared for me after all of this stuff has happened, I feel like I don't know, I would just feel better day to day rather than feeling lost and having to ask questions and them having to figure it out. Yeah, I just feel like having more resources there would be better in the beginning.
Just even the discussions of it beforehand, because it's
Yeah,
unavoidable to experience the side effects that you experienced after, but just even knowing what to expect after a large surgery like that, I feel like could change how you feel afterwards.
100%.
And so, how have you navigated all of that now post your surgery? Because you still had treatment to do after that surgery. There's so many different points in your journey where you've done one thing and it's like a major milestone. And I think you've been so great about celebrating those milestones while being so honest that this isn't over yet. I still have more to go. So after that surgery, what came next and how did you keep going forward from there?
Yeah, after that surgery, I kind of just gave my body just time to rest. Didn't try to push myself because like I'm always trying to like do things and like think that I can do more things than I can. So I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna rest. Listen to my body as much as I can. Don't push it. So I think that helped me to prepare better for radiation because I knew that was coming next. And I think I just stopped wanting to take control, like just let go of control really helped me a lot.
I know for me during my treatment, the first 2 months, I had a calendar with the plan of who was gonna drive me where, when, and all of the appointments, and had no idea how much all of that changes at the drop of a hat with symptoms
Yeah,
we've all kind of experienced that of like, "Here's our plan of how it's gonna go," and then you can't really imagine how it's gonna go, so I think that's interesting that you call that out because it's almost like this point of surrender where you're just like, it's gonna be what it's gonna be, and I have to react to it.
yeah, for sure. I think in the beginning, when I did like my first phase of chemo, I was still trying to control everything. And I was like, set me up for failure. I would get so upset with myself. And I was like, you know what? This time I'm done. I don't want to control anything anymore. So yeah, just letting go of that helped so much.
In the intro, you mentioned you were recently laid off from your position, but were you working throughout all this whole treatment time too?
I was, yeah, I never stopped working. It was definitely hard for sure to navigate all of that while still working.
Did it help you feel a sense of normalcy, or something that you could maintain control of, or just because essentially you had to, you kept working?
I think in the beginning, it made me feel more normal, just like to keep my routine or try to keep it. Um, But I would say definitely probably after radiation up until 2 weeks ago, I was feeling so stressed out. I was like, I wish I didn't have a job right now. Like I need some kind of break. So I think throughout my journey, working and trying to navigate a career like has like really changed for me. But now I just kind of feel lost without like my routine. So I'm like, I did that for so many years. Now it's like, what do I do?
You did it for so many years and all through treatment. And I think I don't know if anybody who hasn't been in the position could really understand this, but like when you end treatment, that is a major transition of figuring out your day to day. Because, like you said, your days for the past 2 years have been full of doctor's appointments, the safety net of the hospital, even though that's a really tough place to go to. It's where people are taking care of you nonstop. You have your medical team, and you had a routine, even though it's not the routine we want to have in life. Like you figured out how to live over the last 2 years amongst this diagnosis. And so treatment ends, and you're already transitioning into figuring out a new routine while now also losing a big part of that routine, which was your job. And this is an interesting time to have our podcast because you might not even have the answer to this question right now, but having gotten to a point where you had a routine, but we're also kind of like, I wish I could change this a little bit. What are you hoping now for your job moving forward? And has cancer changed your perspective on how you want to work, what you want to do, your lifestyle when it comes to working?
Yeah, cancer has definitely changed my perspective on what I want to do and what a job means to me. I think before I was like, oh my God, I want to climb all these corporate ladders. I want to get to this certain point. Now I'm like, that doesn't even matter to me anymore. If I can just do what I love and not even necessarily do the same thing, then that means the world to me. And I honestly think this is a really good opportunity for me to pivot or change or do whatever I want to do and focus on that. So I'm actually kind of grateful that this happened right at this moment.
Yeah, it's a really challenging thing, but I admire that outlook. And I think that's such a major perspective shift because cancer asks you to do that all the time. Change your perspective and
Yeah.
shift and look at things differently. But then to take something that is really hard, like a layoff, and think of it as an opportunity is pretty incredible. So maybe you don't have an idea yet, but do you have an idea after cancer of what you want to do?
I've been thinking of maybe starting my own business or something like that. I don't know what it is yet, but still trying to figure it out. I'm kind of excited. I don't know. I feel like me before cancer, this would be the end of my world, or I'd be so upset, but I'm actually excited and happy. It's a weird feeling.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense though. And so you're looking at it as an opportunity while also figuring out where everything goes next for you. And you recently rang the bell, that long awaited bell ring.
Yeah.
What was that feeling like? Because you are going through the layoff at the same time, and you know you're about to enter this uncertain phase of life, but you're also ringing the bell. What did that feel like for you?
There were so many emotions there. I was excited, happy, but also so emotional because I was like, I just went through all of these crazy things like for 2 years and it's all coming to an end. I didn't know if I would get to that point. So it's just a crazy feeling. But I think I was more excited than anything to just be able to ring it and just be done. Yeah.
That is really exciting and such a great time to like look forward for new opportunities and a fresh start. What kind of support do you have or do you wish you had as you embark on this new phase of your journey, the survivorship or post active treatment?
I feel like my support system has been huge. I don't think I would have made it here without them, to be honest. So I'm super thankful for my family, my friends, even like my job at the time was so supportive and literally everyone that's helped me. I don't think I could be here right now without them. So I hope that I get the same kind of support like in survivorship, but I know I'm already kind of starting to feel like a different kind of like transition there. No one's really reaching out anymore. No one's like asking me how I am. So I hope that the support continues still.
I know you found a couple people on Instagram. Do you still stay in communication with them?
I did start a DSRCT group on Instagram, which I'm really loving the community there. And I've met so many people within the last 2 years that have had DSRCT and who are going through it right now. So that's been huge. And just having that group chat to go to every day and check in on everyone's been just so cool.
That's
That's
incredible.
amazing to take. the challenge that you received of your being told, we don't have anybody here, we've never seen anybody here, and you've taken that to find people and create a group where you all can communicate.
Yeah, it's awesome.
You basically filled a void that existed beforehand, and from your experience, made it into something that now other people who were also experiencing that void have, which is so amazing. How many people do you have in that group?
I think there's 30 to 50 people now,
Wow.
something like that. Yeah, it's from going from knowing one person, now I know like 30 plus people at least. Yeah.
That's really amazing. I mean, it's one of those, it's not amazing because I don't want anyone to have
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, sarcoma or DSRCT, but I think it is what's incredible about that is that you literally knew nobody with this and were told, like Katie said, there's nobody we have to connect you with. And now you've made that connection for other people, which is doing so much for that community. And we can put the link to that in the show notes of the podcast.
That would be perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. So you have that community of support in your first 2 weeks of transitioning into post-active treatment. You said people have already stopped checking in. And I think that's such a real feeling because I think the general public who hasn't experienced cancer thinks of that bell ringing moment as being done. You're finished, you're done, everything can be put behind you. Let's move forward. But a theme we've heard a lot on this podcast is the experience doesn't end when you ring the bell. So could you speak to that a little bit of what that has been like for you just in the first few weeks?
Yeah, for sure. I feel like most people, even if you haven't had cancer, they don't really realize that it doesn't really stop like after you ring the bell or after your treatment is done. Like I'm always gonna have to be dealing with appointments and scans and the fear of it coming back, which I think most people don't really realize. So once they like see you ring the bell, they think that everything's over and you can go back to normal life when that's the total opposite of how it actually is. It's just interesting to see how like my friends and like family have really, I wouldn't say they stopped checking in, but like it's just like a whole different thing now. Like one of my friends was like, "Oh, you're good now. Congrats." And I'm like, "No, it's not. I wish that's how it was, but that's just not how it's gonna be."
That's that you're good now is I think a quote we've heard before on this podcast. And we all want to feel that way, but there's so much afterwards, like you said, that you'll have to continue with your appointments, your maintenance, your scans, everything. But emotionally, I feel like that's also a big transition of moving from active treatment to life afterwards. And it's so exciting. But there's also something you said when you were talking about ringing the bell was like, I just went through so much. And do you feel like at this point, you can even wrap your head around all of that?
I feel like I'm now just starting to process everything I've been through. I think it took till this point to be like, wow, like I actually went through all of that. Like,
Yeah.
I think my brain kind of blocked a lot of it out. And like my fiance will say something or my mom will say something and I'm like, wait, that happened? Like they're like, oh yeah, that happened during like your surgery or treatment. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I guess it was just like so traumatic that I just like I literally don't remember. But I think I'm now starting to be like, okay, that happened and that was real.
Is there anything you have found so far? And again, I know you're very new to post-active treatment, but anything you've found so far that is helpful as you're kind of processing those things?
I think just talking to other people who have gone through it or are done with their treatment has been the most helpful for me so far. But yeah, I guess because I'm so new, I'm just like still in like just a weird area.
Yeah, it's a big gray area. And I think that's a great answer, though, because I think what I hope people get from listening to where you are currently in your journey is how much of a gray area post-active treatment is, especially in the early stages. And when you were talking about your surgery, I remember us talking about recording your episode either right before or right after your surgery. And
Yeah.
I'm thinking about now what that conversation would have been like compared to where you currently are. And in some ways, I'm glad we waited. I don't know how you feel about that because I think wrapping your head around all of it at that point would be so different from where you are today.
Yeah, it'd be totally different. I feel like I'd have a different perspective altogether. And I'm glad that we waited till now too.
Yeah. And it would even be interesting to talk to you a year out from now and all of those things because
Yeah,
your perspective changes throughout the journey so much. And this is part of the beauty and all the different guests we have. Some people are 2 weeks out of treatment, some people are 20 weeks out of treatment, some people are in the middle of treatment, some people have been in treatment for 10 years. There's so many different perspectives and aspects of this, and it's so complex and layered that if you really were to just have this byline through the entire series is like how complex a diagnosis is, and particularly our rare sarcoma diagnoses. So it is just interesting to reflect as we're talking about where you currently are, how different that has been throughout, and also how many question marks there are throughout the whole thing, even when you're finished with active treatment.
for sure. It's just so wild to me.
And you mentioned your fiance. So I'd love to talk about what the experience was like becoming engaged during treatment. I know that was something that happened in the middle of treatment, and it's very relevant to a lot of the adolescent young adult population. You're going through cancer treatment, but you're still also living your life as a young adult, and that's a typical experience as a young adult. So could you talk a little bit about that and what that experience has been like?
Yeah, for sure. Honestly, I was totally shocked. I didn't think it would happen during my cancer treatment at all. I was so happy when it happened, and it kind of like gave me like an extra, I don't know, push to get through treatment, if that makes sense. I was like, okay, wait, this is like what I've wanted for so long, and I'm like, I can get through treatment now. Like, it just like gave me a whole new like perspective, and it was right after radiation it happened, and I was like, I really don't want to do any more treatment. Like, I'm done. And then I was like, you know what? I can get through it. I need to keep living. So it gave me that extra push to keep going. But yeah, it was just amazing. And I was totally shocked and surprised, but it was the happiest day ever.
That is really exciting. Congratulations. It's something that
Thank
I
you.
know myself as well as other sarcoma patients struggle with is the balance of celebrating the now and living in the now versus also planning for the future because so much is unknown and you hope that you're moving on and we all hope that, but as sarcoma patients don't really, nobody knows what the future holds. So could you share a little bit about kind of any emotions or thoughts or feelings you have around that balance of living in the now but also the uncertainty of maybe planning for the future too?
For sure. Yeah, I feel like living in the now has been easier for me than it was before. The future part is, I think, where I struggle the most and have the most struggle with for sure. All of the chemo nurses during treatment ask me, "Oh, are you planning for your wedding yet? Are you wedding planning?" And having everyone in my family ask me, and I'm just like, I don't know what my future is. So planning anything for the future is so hard to do. And I don't know how to navigate that yet, but so many emotions around that for sure.
Yeah, and it
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily mean as big as planning a wedding, just planning a vacation for the summer or
Yeah,
a dinner with friends next week. You don't know how you might feel or whatnot. So it's a tough thing to balance.
it's so tough. Yeah, I really struggle with planning. I think that's my biggest struggle, even during cancer treatment and now. It's so hard.
Because you don't know how you're gonna feel when you wake up every day, and I think this is something you speak about online, but what living with a chronic illness is like. How do you plan for tomorrow when you don't know how you're gonna wake up feeling in the morning? And then how do you plan for a
Exactly.
wedding when there are so many things that could impact that?
Yeah, for sure.
Do you and your fiance talk about that? You and your fiance, it's your lives together. How do you two navigate planning for your futures together when it is a really hard thing to plan for you?
For sure. Yeah, it's really hard, honestly, talking to him about it sometimes. I think for me, like, I'm trying to live like in the moment, day to day. And he's very much about that too. He's like, let's just take every day as it comes. We not look at the future too much and just plan things as we go and as we want, which is like hard for me because I'm like such a planner and I want to like plan all of those future things. But I think we just have to plan it and just do things and not hold back, honestly, because life is short and do all the things, but it is like such a hard conversation to have with someone.
A part of the future planning that you and your fiance have been talking about is potentially surrogacy at some point with the embryos that you were able to retrieve during your egg retrieval. What have those conversations been like? I think this is an area of adolescent young adult survivorship that there is not a huge light shined on, and we don't hear very often about what the early conversations of potential surrogacy are like. So, what has that been like for you and your fiance?
Yeah, it's honestly been kind of hard. We don't really know anything about surrogacy. We don't know where to start. We never thought we would be in this position before. So it's just been like getting as much information as we can, talking to as many people as we can, just getting our story out there. Trying to find someone who's willing to do that for us has been very challenging. Something I never thought I would have to do in my life. We're hopeful though that like it'll all work out at the right time.
Absolutely, I have no doubt it will, but yeah, it's just a part of the whole adolescent young adult experience that when you're diagnosed at the age you're diagnosed at, you don't really anticipate having to make decisions about, yet here you are, and you've had to make quite a lot of decisions along the way.
Yeah.
I have no doubt that whatever the next steps are you'll take as you've taken this whole journey, which is really all you can do is live in the moment, take it one day at a time and make those decisions together with your support. So, as you step into this next chapter for you, to post-active treatment, looking back, what message do you want to leave with listeners today?
I think the message that I want to give to people is that just don't lose hope, like no matter what, and to keep going because I never thought I would get to this point. So even if your diagnosis is something rare, don't lose hope. Keep pushing and don't give up on yourself.
I think that's so important for people to hear because I just know from talking for the last 2 years how many times you've had to dig deep to find that hope, and especially as somebody who has an ultra rare diagnosis, it is hard to dig for the hope with any cancer diagnosis. But then
Yeah,
to do it when you don't know anybody else with your subtype is a really massive undertaking. And I think that just it's such a simple statement, "Don't lose hope," but it is so deep and goes so far beyond the simplicity of those few words because I know how hard you have had to dig every single day to find that hope. I've watched you do that for 2 years, and I think I really just want people to understand how hard that is to do and that you are here 2 years later saying that to somebody, and so if there's someone newly diagnosed or someone with an ultra rare diagnosis, I really hope those words land meaningfully to them because I know that they're said without a platitude coming from you. So I think that's a really important message.
for sure. Yeah, there's always hope, honestly.
Where can people find you if people wanted to follow up with you or continue learning about what you've been through and where you're going and get in touch? Where can they do that?
Yeah, the best way to find me would be on Instagram and TikTok at Gianna Cericola.
We'll link that in the show notes as well. But Gianna, I'm so glad we finally got to have our conversation, and I'm so excited to see what you do next. I know it's a really scary leap, but also I know how you're looking at this as an opportunity, and I really think it is that. So I'm just excited to see what you do next. Thanks so much for doing this. I really appreciate you making the time, especially as you're going through so many transitions.
Thank you so
Likewise,
much. It
Gianna,
was
it's a
amazing talking
pleasure
to you
hearing
guys.
your story and talking with you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I was so excited to talk to you guys, honestly. Thank you. It was a pleasure talking to you guys. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us today. Did this episode resonate with you? You can join the discussion about this episode in our Sarcoma Stories Facebook group, linked in the show notes. If you found this podcast helpful, your feedback is incredibly valuable and helps to create more awareness about sarcoma while sharing vital resources with someone who may need it. Be sure to leave a rating and review. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.